I had always considered myself a rational person. Even as a kid, I never fell for ghost stories or campfire horrors. But rationality has a funny way of bending when the world shifts. When the things you know for sure are suddenly swallowed in darkness. That night I learned that lesson the hard way. It all started when I moved into a small rundown apartment on the edge of the city. The place wasn't much. 2 bedrooms, a cramped kitchen, and a hallway that was narrower than it should have been. But it was cheap, and I needed a place to live. The building itself was ancient, probably from the 1930s, with faded floral wallpaper peeling at the edges, and pipes that clanged like metal bones whenever the heat kicked on. But I didn't mind. I told myself the charm of older buildings outweighed the quirks. The first few days were normal enough. I unpacked my boxes, cleaned what I could, and explored my new neighborhood. Everything seemed quiet, maybe too quiet. The kind of quiet that presses on your ears, that makes you hyper-aware of every tiny sound. A dripping faucet, the distant hum of a refrigerator, the soft scuff of a neighbor's shoe across the floor above. I didn't think much of it at the time. It was on the 4th night that I noticed something. I woke around 2 in the morning, something prickling the back of my neck. The hallway outside my bedroom door was dimly lit by the glow of the street lamp filtering through the window. But what made my skin crawl was the feeling of being watched. I hadn't heard anything, no footsteps, no creaks. Just that undeniable sensation that someone was standing there, just outside my door staring at me. I told myself it was nothing. Probably the combination of moving stress and the old building settling. But when I got up to use the bathroom, I noticed the keyhole in my door. For some reason, I was drawn to it. A foolish curiosity made me lean in, and that's when I saw it, a shadow. A flicker of movement that didn't belong. I blinked and it was gone. I slept fitfully that night, listening to every creak of the pipes and groan of the old building, every little noise amplified by fear. By morning, I had convinced myself it was just my imagination. But when I left for work, I noticed something odd on the hallway carpet. Tiny, dark smudges leading from my door toward the stairwell. I bent down, heart hammering, but there were no footprints, just these strange, almost oily stains that vanished the second I looked away. That night, I tried locking the door extra tight. I even jammed a chair under the knob. But the feeling didn't leave. Around 1:57 a.m., I woke to a faint whisper. At first, I thought it was my imagination, some leftover trick from the shadows in the corners of my room. But the whisper repeated, "I'm here." It was soft, urgent, almost amused. My heart stopped. I froze under the blankets, listening. The whisper didn't come from outside the room. It came from the hallway. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. And then I heard it, the keyhole rattling, slow at first, like someone testing it, then faster, like laughter in metal. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam shone across the hallway, illuminating nothing. The keyhole was still intact, the door still locked. Yet the sound persisted, growing, rhythmic, teasing. I spent the rest of the night in a chair, light on, eyes fixed on the door, shivering. By morning, I was exhausted, haunted by the sense of those unseen eyes. I tried to explain it to friends over the phone. "Old building stuff," I said, though my voice shook. None of them understood, and I didn't expect them to. Days turned into a week. The shadow in the keyhole became more daring. I would wake in the night to a cold chill creeping from the hallway, hear soft scraping at the door, and glimpse a dark shape retreating just as my eyes landed on the keyhole. I started to avoid the hallway, ducking into my bedroom whenever I heard the faintest noise. Sometimes when I passed the keyhole during the day, I swore I saw 2 eyes staring back at me. Not human eyes, black, void-like, glinting with something hungry. One evening I came home to find a note slipped under the door. The paper was blank but smeared with some dark substance like wet charcoal. My pulse raced. I picked it up, and as I held it I felt a draft behind me, like a breath of icy air brushing my neck. I spun around. No one was there. Nothing moved. But from the corner of my eye I saw it. The keyhole shadow, longer, stretched unnaturally, almost reaching toward me. I stumbled backward, dropping the paper. It crumpled on the floor. The shadow retreated. I stopped going out after dark. The world outside could wait. I had to survive the nights inside. I installed extra locks, bought a motion sensor light for the hallway, and even considered sleeping in the living room with the door blocked. But it didn't matter. Every night the shadow returned, and every night it came closer. I began to notice details, Sounds of dragging, faint whispers repeating words I couldn't quite make out, like an unfinished sentence that would haunt me forever. Then came the incident that broke me. I had just fallen asleep when I heard my bedroom door creak. Not the usual soft creak. This was deliberate, heavy, as if someone or something was testing the hinges. I froze. The keyhole darkened as the shadow stretched upward. My eyes widened in terror. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. And then the whisper came, louder this time, clear as a knife cutting through silence. Open the door. I didn't. I couldn't. I grabbed the nearest object, a metal lamp, and raised it. The shadow recoiled for a moment, then elongated further, pressing itself against the keyhole. And that's when I saw it. 2 eyes. Hollow black without sclera or iris, staring at me with a mix of hunger and amusement. I can't describe the fear in words. Pure, unfiltered, raw terror that grips your chest and refuses to let go. I held the lamp like a weapon, trembling, sweat pouring down my face. And then it spoke again, this time a single word drawn out in that impossible whisper. Alone. The next morning I found scratches along the doorframe, deep gouges that hadn't been there before. They formed patterns, jagged, erratic, almost like a warning. I moved out that same day. I couldn't stay. I couldn't wait to see what came next. But even now, months later, I feel it. Sometimes when I'm alone in my apartment, I glance at the door and for a second, I think I see the keyhole darken, the shadows flicker. I don't know what it was, what it wanted, or why it chose me. All I know is that there are things that watch, things that wait in the edges of our perception, and sometimes they don't need a door to get inside. Even now as I write this, I can feel it behind me, watching, patient, waiting for the moment I forget it's there. I will never look through a keyhole the same way again. I never thought I would regret moving into a top-floor apartment. I imagined peace, silence, and a view that stretched over the city's jagged skyline. The listing promised quiet neighbors and an old building with character. I had no idea that character sometimes comes with eyes that don't belong to anyone living. It started the day I moved in. My apartment was small, a single bedroom with a kitchenette and a narrow hallway leading to the entrance. The floorboards creaked under every step and the pipes groaned like they carried something heavy. But it was home, or at least it was supposed to be. I spent the first night unpacking, listening to the hum of the city below and thinking about how peaceful everything seemed. Until I heard it. A faint tapping. Rhythmic, deliberate, coming from the ceiling. I froze mid-unpacking, straining to hear. It wasn't the pipes, it had a cadence, a pattern. Tap, 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 pause. Tap, tap. I shook my head. Probably an upstairs neighbor, I told myself. Nothing sinister, just someone moving around. I tried to ignore it. But over the next few nights, the tapping continued. Always late, always when the city below had gone quiet. Then one night it changed. The tapping slowed, became irregular, almost like deliberate footsteps pacing across the ceiling. And I started hearing whispers, low, soft, almost incoherent, like someone muttering in a language I couldn't recognize. I couldn't make out the words, but they carried a weight, a menace. I tried asking the building manager about it the next day. Top floor's always been quiet, he said, shrugging. Maybe the ceiling's settling. That didn't explain the whispers. Then I noticed something else, something worse. I was brushing my teeth late one night when a shadow flickered at the corner of my eye. It came from the hallway. My apartment's hallway was narrow, barely wide enough to pass through comfortably, with a single light bulb dangling from the ceiling. I froze, staring. There was nothing, but the keyhole of my door, it darkened. Not with shadow exactly, but like an absence, as if the light itself was being swallowed. My pulse spiked. My fingers tightened on the toothbrush. I tried ignoring it. I slept with the door locked, window shut, and lights on. But the feeling didn't leave. At 2:13 a.m. every night, without fail, I would hear the footsteps above me, the whispers, and then the scratching. Small at first, like nails raking wood, then louder, as if someone or something was circling my apartment, listening, waiting. The first time I looked through the peephole, I saw nothing. Nothing but the hallway. But the sense of being watched didn't leave. I started noticing little things. The doorknob moving slightly, faint scuff marks on the floor in front of my door. Objects I hadn't touched shifted a hair's width. One morning I woke to find the keyhole smeared with a dark substance. I don't know what it was, and I didn't touch it. I didn't dare. I started staying awake at night. I would sit in my chair, light on, staring at the door, imagining the shadow looming over the keyhole. Sometimes I felt it lean in, breathe in the small crack beneath the door. Sometimes I swore I heard its voice in the whispering above. One night I couldn't take it anymore. I needed to see who or what was upstairs. I grabbed a flashlight, my phone, and my courage, and I went up the narrow, creaking staircase. The hallway was dark, the light from the street lamps outside creating long, jagged shadows that seemed to twitch at the edges of my vision. My apartment was at the end of the hall, number 12. The door above me. 13, I stopped at number 13. The door was plain, unremarkable, but the air around it was thick, heavy. I pressed my ear to it. Nothing. And then I heard it. A whisper so close I thought it was inside my own head. "You shouldn't be here." I staggered back, heart hammering. I pressed the key to unlock my apartment, fumbling with trembling hands. The door swung open and the apartment was empty. Nothing moved. Nothing breathed. But the keyhole, I swear I saw eyes, black, endless, staring back at me. That night I didn't sleep. I stayed on the floor in the living room, watching the door. Around 1:47 a.m., I heard the ceiling above me groan. The whispers returned, this time louder, clearer. And then the footsteps, slow, deliberate, circling the apartment like a predator. And I realized it wasn't just above me. It was in the walls, in the floor, everywhere, yet nowhere at once. I tried calling friends, the police, anyone. But the moment I spoke about it, the whispers would start. Sometimes repeating my own words, sometimes mocking me, sometimes commanding. "Open the door," it said once. Another time, "Look at me." I refused. Weeks passed. Sleep-deprived, paranoid. I started seeing shadows out of the corners of my eyes, shadows that moved against the light, that stretched and recoiled unnaturally. I avoided the hallway. I avoided the kitchen. I didn't even dare touch the ceiling. Every creak, every tap, every scratch made me flinch. And then came the night I realized it wasn't just above me anymore. I woke to the sound of slow, deliberate scratching, not from the ceiling, not from the walls, but from my own door. Someone or something was trying to enter. I grabbed a kitchen knife, my hands shaking uncontrollably. The scratches grew louder, then silence. I stayed in the bedroom, knife clutched, listening. And that's when I heard it through the keyhole. Not just whispers this time, words, clear, sharp, deliberate. "You can't hide. We are all around you, and soon, you will be alone." I don't know how I survived that night. I don't know how I managed to leave my apartment the next morning, dragging my boxes, paying double rent at another place, abandoning everything behind. But I know this. I never looked through a keyhole again, and I never questioned the emptiness of an apartment when it felt alive. Even now, months later, I can't sleep without checking the door. I can't leave the lights off. I can't hear footsteps above without imagining that shadow moving just beneath the ceiling, watching, waiting, because I learned something about certain beings. They don't need doors. They don't need walls. They just wait. They watch. And when you move, they move too. Always, patiently, always watching through the smallest of cracks. I have nightmares every night, and in every nightmare I see the keyhole darken, and those black, endless eyes staring back at me. Some things in this world are patient. Some things don't leave when you move out. Some things follow. I thought I had seen everything after the experiences in the previous apartments, the tapping, the whispers, the shadows in the keyhole. I was wrong. Moving into this new place, I wanted to believe I was done. I wanted normal. But the thing about things that watch is, they never let go. The building seemed innocent enough. Brick exterior, a small lobby with a dusty chandelier, and narrow hallways lined with faded paintings that looked older than the building itself. My apartment was on the second floor, number 7, right above a ground floor unit that seemed empty for months. I didn't think much of it. The first night was quiet. Too quiet. I unpacked in the soft glow of my bedside lamp, thinking I could finally breathe. I even made coffee and played music softly in the background to drown out the silence. But at 11:17 p.m. I heard it, a subtle scratching from below. Not loud enough to be footsteps, not constant enough to be rats. Something deliberate. Something patient. I froze, straining to hear. The sound stopped. My pulse was racing. I shook my head and tried to convince myself it was nothing. But as I lay in bed later, I realized the air near the door felt heavier, colder, and then I noticed it. Through the tiny crack at the bottom of my door, a shadow moving. Slow, methodical, like it was crawling along the floor, stretching, reaching. I thought I was imagining it. Maybe I was. But then I heard the whisper, "I've been waiting for you." I bolted upright, heart hammering. The voice wasn't loud, but it had weight, like a presence pressing against my chest. I grabbed my flashlight, shining it across the floor. Nothing, just shadows stretching into corners. But the keyhole, I didn't even need to look, I felt it. Something was there, watching, patient, waiting. I tried to sleep. I really did. But the scratching continued, circling the apartment in slow, irregular intervals. And the whispers. They grew clearer. Sometimes it would repeat words I had said during the day. Other times it spoke in a language I couldn't recognize. At one point I thought I even heard laughter. Low, guttural, amused at my fear. A week passed. I didn't leave the apartment much. I barely ate. I stopped answering phone calls. Every noise, every creak in the building, every tap in the pipes made me flinch. And always the keyhole. I could feel its gaze as though it were alive, breathing, pressing just beyond the metal. Then came the night I saw it. I was lying in bed, too exhausted to move, when I noticed a faint glow coming from under the door. At first I thought it was streetlight spilling in, but it wasn't. The glow pulsed a slow, unnatural rhythm. I approached cautiously. As I neared, I noticed a hand, no, not a hand, a shadow forming the shape of something humanoid, pressing against the keyhole. I froze. My mind screamed at me to back away, but my body felt paralyzed. And then I saw the eyes, black, endless voids staring directly at me through the keyhole. Not human, not anything I had ever seen. And the whisper came again, this time in my ear, though nothing was near. "Open the door. Let me in." I shook my head violently, backing away. But the sound didn't stop. The whisper repeated over and over, layering itself, multiplying until it became a chorus of voices. The scratching grew louder, moving along the edges of the floorboards, circling me, pressing closer. I grabbed a broom, swinging it at the door. The shadow recoiled, but it didn't disappear. The keyhole glowed faintly again, and I swear I saw a mouth open within it, stretching impossibly wide as though it were screaming silently. I ran out of the apartment that night, leaving everything behind. I didn't care. I didn't look back. But the thing followed me, or at least I think it did, because when I stayed at a hotel that night alone in my room, I felt it. The same cold weight at my door, the same endless gaze from the keyhole. I couldn't escape it. Weeks later, I found myself trying to rationalize it, trying to research old buildings, urban legends, anything. But there were no answers. Only reports of disappearances, whispers in old apartment complexes, and people who had simply vanished, leaving doors locked from the inside, keyholes staring into empty hallways. Then one night, I saw it in my own apartment again, this time in the mirror. My reflection wasn't mine. Not entirely. Behind me, through the reflection, I saw black eyes staring from a keyhole. A keyhole that didn't exist in my apartment. And then the whisper, clearer than ever. "You can't hide. I am inside you now." I smashed the mirror and ran. I haven't stayed in one place for more than a night since. But even now I feel it. Watching. Waiting. Lurking in keyholes, shadows, the small cracks and gaps we ignore. It's patient, relentless, and always there. I write this as a warning, though I'm not sure anyone would believe it. Some things are older than buildings, older than people. They don't care if you move, if you lock doors, or if you hide in corners. They watch, they wait, and sometimes they follow. Tonight, as I type this, I hear the scratching at my door. I know the keyhole is darkening, that something is peering in. Something that is not human, not alive, but sentient enough to know I am terrified. I cannot leave. I cannot hide. And I know. One day it will get in, and when it does, there will be nothing left of me but the memory of the watching.